So obviously you guys are fairly versed in the rationales. We have, I'm sure within the district you have various stages of updates. So we'll go over this one. If you have questions, just stop me. It's kind of I usually go over cleaning, kind of where to help you find answers to your questions first, and then we kind of jump into the cooking, because if you remember how to clean it and remember how to find help to get your answers, those two things I really need you to stick with you, because I know as we get cooking and it gets to be like an information overload and everyone kind of starts to look at me with glazed eyes that I'm not going to remember this, but if I give you enough tools at the beginning to kind of find your way is usually my intention. And then if you have big questions, you can always call Dan. And then Dan will call me. So the first thing, like with the cleaning, it gives you, I don't know if it's easier if I stand on this side or that side. Just yell if I'm in your way. So you have cleaning. They now have 12 different options for cleaning cycles. They have this one with a leaf, which they call their eco-friendly. If you notice, the time is just slightly longer. It just extends the wash cycle, but it uses less detergent, because they ran into people that are like, oh, it's using too much detergent. And being a school and closing at 1:30 or 2, you have plenty of time. A hotel that goes from breakfast to might have a wedding that evening, they don't really have a lot of time. They want to wash as fast as possible. So it gives you those choices. Same as the other one, it'll highlight what it's suggesting to do with your current status of your oven. And you can just with the index cards flip back and forth to see, and then it tells you how many detergents and how many of the rinse. And it's the rinse packet. There's 4 cubes in the rinse, but they want you use the whole thing. I ran into a customer that was only using 1 cube. It's kind of the same as the other one. The care status is the parts that you can't see. That one, that percentage floats gradually. If this gets down to 0, which I've been to a place that it was at 0, a couple hard washes won't change it to the extreme like the clean one. It'll just shift slowly. It's all the parts you can't see. Water's really harsh. We have hard water in this area, so it's the delimer is built into there, but they call it a maintenance delimer, not like your dishwasher where you dump in a gallon of delimer and it's going to clean the whole thing, or your coffee pot. This is going to just slowly, if there's some buildup, it'll just whittle away at it. So just stay on top of it. And then that's your cleaning percentage. Same as the other units. If you let it get really dirty, when you go to do a cook cycle, it'll pop on and say, do you want to clean me an hour later? And if you push later, after so many times, it will freeze on the clean screen, and you have to do a clean cycle. Like, you can't do anything else.
The dirtier it gets, the less it takes longer to cook to at least.
I said it's just like changing the oil and maintaining your car. Like, your gas light comes on, it's warning you, and eventually there's no gas left, and it's not going to let you do anything. So that's kind of just the cleaning. These ones, the cleaning tablets are different. It used to be guys red and blue. It's a green detergent. It's more eco-friendly. They took out a chemical that's supposed to be better for the environment. So they aren't interchangeable. So if you use the red ones, you got to use the red ones in here, green ones in here. Don't swap them out. Any questions on that?
I have a question. Jan, on these old ones, are you guys using a liquid delimer? No, just the tablets? Okay, that's great. The real old ones had a rational descaler chemical.
And you had a foot pump. You had to pump it in and pump it out. And so the door gaskets do pull out to clean. I don't like to pull them out because it's embarrassing trying to wiggle that back in, because it's just awkward. So they do come out. These ones, compared to that version, has a double pane glass. These ones have a triple. And there's little hinges to pop them apart. So if you get some splatter or something in between and you want to wipe down, or sometimes in their construction of it, they leave fingerprints. So
I wash those maybe once a week.
they get some film on them. Yeah, just keep them clean. This one, the drain tray and the door is smaller than the older one, so you kind of have to pop the glass open to have access to the drain tray. And then the little valve is fairly small, so you do want to check that periodically to make sure you don't have a lot of crumbs. You guys don't do as much of like heavy cooking like a hotel would do, that they might have more crumbs flying around. But just keep it wiped out. Yours is nice and clean. Because if it does, that little drain plug gets clogged, you might come in the morning, there's water on the floor because it's overflowed. Maybe it's happened before. And this is much easier to show you when it's cold than if we start cooking stuff and trying to pop that apart when it's hot. The only big change too is the tablets still go in the round basket, but it's just in the bottom now instead of on the top. Kind of same as the older models. Pull the racks out. You can shift the slides. It says when you go to do a clean cycle, it'll tell you to take the racks and grids out. Feel free to leave them in there. If it's really dirty, what I would suggest is pulling them off the rails and stacking them in at an angle just so that your rails get clean. Because like when we fried burgers or steaks or bacon, I mean, it looks like the inside of a smoker. There's a smoker attachment, so it's nice to take those out to get them clean. Still has the spray hose in the same spot. This drawer for the blue tablets, when you put them in, I'm sure you're all aware, they fall down in the machine. So if you do have to cancel a clean cycle once you start it, it'll do a 30-minute wash cycle to rinse out because you can't remove those tablets. It'll tell you to remove the detergent, but it still needs time to rinse out. So you are dead in the water for 30 minutes while it rinses. Learned that the hard way at one of these trainings. We had pushed a button for a clean cycle and I had the door open and somebody shut the door. So it started, so we had to wait for it to rinse. Sometimes it's learning the hard way. So that's the basics of the cleaning. Any questions on that?
How often should you spray it? Just manually?
As you need. I mean, I like to do it if I've cooked something and like I did beef jerky in one in our store and I dripped on the bottom. I just use the spray hose to spray it down so it didn't bake on. So you use it as necessary. You guys obviously keep them very clean. They look brand new.
The fan automatically will cool down, right?
Yes. So when you start a wash cycle, if you go to, like you just took something out of the oven and you turn it on to wash, it'll say it's too hot. And I know the old one did it. I can't remember if this one does it too. It'll like prompt you to shut the door, but then it'll buzz at you to open the door.
Yes, that's what
It did it because like so if this was the restaurant cook line and you might have had tables right there, it kind of is just are you sure you want to start this fan blasting? Is kind of what it did. And it will cool down the more you have the door open, or further you have the door open and the longer it's open, the faster it'll cool down.
Old ones, you can't even access to see how dirty it is until it's cooled down.
Till it's cooled down.
Yeah.
That one's always, the timer gives you the 2-minute warning. Like it just sits there and spins and then, oh, there's 2 minutes left. Any other questions on cleaning? All right. So we'll go into some of kind of the housekeeping. There are buttons compared to that one. Anyone's newer than that had the touch screen. There's certain buttons you have to hold for 2 or 3 seconds. This newer one, it actually has a little bar that slides across so you know how long you've held it. That
I do actually have one question. After our cleaning cycle, say we leave at the end of the day and it's still clean, but when we come in the morning, they're very wet inside.
they're still wet.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't dry themselves.
Okay.
So I would suggest maybe not cleaning it right before a long break because then they're going to stay wet and closed. They start to smell stale. On that note, the door gaskets are compressed when the door is shut. So the days when you're not cleaning at the end of the day, do just like this. Just leave them unlatched because your gaskets have time to stretch back out. They'll last longer. That's my biggest suggestion. When you do a clean cycle, it doesn't turn itself completely off afterwards. But in the settings, you can set it to go to the screen to go to sleep. They said it's similar to leaving your computer turned on. Your monitor goes to sleep. It's still on, but it's really not. So it's using little to no energy. Again, I wouldn't do it the last day before holiday break, so it stays for 3 weeks that way, or for summer break. But you can, in the settings, you can set the screen to go to sleep or go dark after a certain period of time. Which, like that one, I turned it on when I got here and it's already asleep. So I think the default is 30 minutes.
I had done just a rinse cycle on that one, so that's probably why.
Okay. So any other questions on that? Okay, so then here's some other kind of the housekeeping stuff and the picture of the gears and tools. Get a little glare. This is where you can adjust your display brightness. You can change this is where you can change your date and time. So if daylight savings time, you can go and change it. Your format is right when they come from Europe, so they're listed as day, month, year. But you guys have already figured out to switch that. Your time's right. Just like your iPhone or on your web browser, the star, you can mark anything to be your favorite, and then it pulls into your home. Then it'll be when you first sign in, if that makes sense. I saw you had a few things marked. So like then right here would be your favorites where you want to change your buzzer, if you want to make that a favorite. Here's in the sounds, where you can change your sounds. There's your master volume. The load action request is pretty much the sound it makes once it's preheated. So you can have it make a different sound than when it's done. So if you're around the corner and you hear it, you know it's coming, or you know what it's telling you. One thing on this load action request, you can change, so it's on continuous. If you turn that off, you can set it to buzz for just a certain period of time. So, which is nice, because when it's preheated and you're just washing your hands like, I hear you, you can set it to only go for like 10 or 15 seconds. If once it's preheated, if you don't open the door to load it, it'll default and turn itself off because it doesn't want to run, not do anything. But it's quite a while. It's probably 25 or 30 minutes, but it just doesn't want to run continuously if you're not actually cooking something. But that's one that's a pretty new feature to switch on that one. And then here is where, or you can pick your sound, and now they're down to, there's 26 new sounds. 23 is the favorite one that everyone always picks.
We had that for all Christmas.
I just took my Christmas tree down on Saturday. I'm kind of a Scrooge about setting it up. I get asked for happy birthday, and I was like, nope, there's not happy birthday. No, that's the only one that's a song. I think you were on 13. I apologize. I didn't look too close before I started. But then with having 2 different ones, if you have them make a different preheat sound, each one in a different off sound, then you start to learn them. That you just, when you hear it, you're like, okay, that's the one I'm working in. In your gears and tools, that's where you can set it on cleaning. Like if you have a new cook and they're not cleaning it as frequently as you want, you can set it like to do a mandatory clean at 2 o'clock on Friday, that then nothing else can happen. It comes on. You can force it to do that. Right here on the service button, they have general parts programmed in their number. They must have did your certified install. They're supposed to put the chef line in there, but they didn't. There's an 800 chef line, and there's 5. So I'm considered certified chef. There's 5 corporate chefs above me, and they live strategically throughout the country. You call that 800 number, and it's like a bat phone. They all like race to answer the phone. So any cooking questions, and they're all over. So write this one down. It's 866-306 chef. I don't know why. I just remember it. The last time I was in Chicago for training, 2 of them were there, and they all have a separate ringtone on their phone for it. And their phones go off, and they're like, "It's my turn," and they like race. So, yep, 866-306, and then it's chef.
What is the chef numbers? 2433? Okay.
There you go. I was like, I don't remember that. I just remember it's chef. In your white box binder that it came with, there is a little card that has that stuff listed. So, and then the service agent is supposed to type it in right there. But
And this number is to call about like questions.
if you have cooking questions, I know West Fargo schools are the same, that you don't get the best cell service in your kitchen. Sometimes when you call in, they'll ask if you can. Like I called one time and they have iPhones, so like, can you switch to an iPhone? And they had me pushing buttons that I had never seen. Like they open like a back door, so they might walk you through some things to spot check. But yes, there's no charge to it, so call with questions. Like especially if you're here making breakfast at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. I'm not at work yet. They are. Like, and that's why they live kind of all over the country, that they answer the phone. And if they don't, they will call back really fast. Any other questions on like the housekeeping admin part of it? I think I kind of covered the gist of it. It's pretty self-explanatory once you start kind of exploring around.
Are there some favorites for it on there right now? 'Cause I thought maybe
Yep.
that-
So you have on the favorites in the admin, the edit screen, the master volume, the probe. And if you want to remove something from the favorites, you just hit the garbage can and it drops off. It isn't like the recycle bin on your desktop. When you hit the garbage can, it's gone. It's not gone from like it's just off your favorites. You can't recall. But when you start saving recipes, if you click, you'll hit the garbage can and then it'll say, "Sure, you want to delete this?" When you say yes, it's gone. There isn't a way to recall them. I got that phone call that they were deleting some of the preset ones and they just went a little crazy and they said, "Can we recall this grilled cheese recipe?" I'm like, "Well, once you hit it twice, it's gone." Once you get into your cooking cycles, you can put things to your favorites here. I've seen one school that they would take their menu for the day and like right before they started, move the items they needed to cook. So then each day they only worked and then they just changed it every day. It's definitely personalized, your personal preference. You guys might think that's a waste of time. The next school thinks it's the best thing ever. Any questions on that before we start kind of flipping through the cooking? Don't ask questions. I feel like I just speed. The need for speed. So the 3 buttons across the top are what they call manual modes. It's a manual steamer, manual combi, where you can select your percentage of heat and steam. And then if 3 red lines is just using it like straight as a convection oven, which is a very expensive convection oven, in my opinion. You could have just got a Blodgett. The advantage of cooking with a combination of heat and steam is a more powerful heat source, plus it's got moisture in it, so it doesn't dry your food out, which means most things you shouldn't have to cover, or it's not necessary to cover, because the reason you covered things was to keep the moisture in. So if you're doing a roast in a dry oven, you're going to want to cover it to keep the moisture in, whereas if you're using the combi mode, there's moisture in the air, the moisture is not going to come out of your product. And steam is just that much more of a powerful heat source. Water boils, creates steam at 212 degrees. You can't get your hand anywhere close to inside of a steamer. I know from experience trying to grab a pan out of a steamer. Actually, I was walking past and somebody flipped the door open and I had my fingers hooked holding a pan on my hip, and so I went back past as that blasted steam, so I steamed all 4 of my fingers. That was probably the worst burn, like physically, I ever had, other than hot boiling sugar.
When I steam vegetables, I open the door and I back up.
Yep, you jump back. So, but you could stick your hand in it if you had this set at 500 degrees. As long as you didn't touch the metal, you could get your hands in. So that's part of finding that sweet spot of the percentage of steam and the right heat temperature to get your stuff done faster and a better quality.
So like when we're heating up like taco meat in the freezer, I've always just had the cover on and take the cover off because they do have it on the combi mode. You would advise to take the cover off.
Yep, it's not necessary to have it covered. In that case, are you double stacking? So you might want to at that point, because of the fact that steam, when it cools off, it turns into condensation, and when that steam water as a gas hits that cold pan until the pan gets warm, it's going to create some condensation. So in that case, yes. But like if you're making roast or steaming vegetables, like raw vegetables, there's no need to cover. If that makes sense. Just in the manual steam mode, you still have more flexibility than in a regular steamer. In a regular steamer, it's 212 degrees, full blast all the time. This guy, you can adjust your air temperature. So you're pretty much telling it, I want to steam and only steam, but don't let the ambient temperature indicator above 135 degrees. Not that you guys would ever do it. We played around, took whole flats of raw eggs, put them in the steamer at 140 degrees for 40 minutes, and when you crack them, a perfect poached egg comes out of the shell. So we poached eggs right in the shell. That would have been really nice to have when I worked in a hotel banquet, and we did Easter brunch, and we did 1,200 orders of Eggs Benedict, and somebody sat in front of a tilt kettle scooping eggs, where it could just put flats and flats and flats, and you just crack it, and a perfect hard-boiled egg falls out. If you do any fresh green veggies that you steam, I know you probably do mostly frozen or IQF, but on the occasion if you've got fresh broccoli or green beans and you want to steam them, any of your green veggies, if you turn it below 185 degrees, the steam won't be strong enough to break the cell walls, which is what turns them brown. So if you're going to steam asparagus or broccoli, florets, if you just turn it, it does take a little longer because it's not as hot, but they won't break down. We've done it, you can even turn it even lower and almost blanch like broccoli for on a veggie tray or on a salad bar. Broccoli turns such bright green. Throw your broccoli in, just blanch it. Your water coming out of your spray hose is cooler water. Use that to cool it down, to shock it, and then refrigerate it. In elementary school, I showed them that, and they did it, and they said their kids are actually eating the broccoli off the salad bar because it just turns that bright, vibrant green.
So you said if you're steaming broccoli to it below 180?
185.
185.
Yep, that's kind of the magic number. It won't get hot enough to break those cell walls. So, or if you're doing like canned or frozen peas, to steam them below 185 degrees, then they'll stay green instead of turning brown. They'll start to turn brown on your steam table because your steam table will get hotter, but makes sense. So it is more than just a steamer, and then it's kind of the same in your manual combi. You get to select your air temperature and your percentage of steam. That's one thing that's nice with all their preset buttons. They've kind of figured out, like I always use the term, the sweet spot of how much steam and what temperature is right or ideal to do certain products. So using the preset cooking modes will get you really close to where you want to be. You might end up having to build your own customized one based off that, but use that to educate yourself on building your own. Make sense? No questions? No more questions? You've asked a few.
Are a lot of you using manual modes right now, just setting time and temps and stuff, or using icons too? A little bit of both, or?
I've done several of like to make my own.
Yeah.
Preferably that one you're standing next to, just like for chicken patties and stuff I've done. But like pizzas are the hardest thing that we've tried to problem solve, just to kind of, we haven't really figured out what
To
to
cook
best
up,
at.
yep.
So yeah, they save a lot.
I see. And once you start saving, instead of having to save here and then go over here and reprogram, you can get a USB stick, put it in, and in your gears and tools, let's see, your cooking, I think it's under cooking systems. No, they move stuff and then it throws me off. So you can, like on this one, you could stick your USB stick in here and say, I want to export stuff onto, right here's a little plastic door. So you say, I'm going to put my menu recipes on my USB stick, and then you come over on this one and say, I want to take the recipes off. So you can transfer them, or if you move over to North and like, I want to take my recipes with me. So you can share that way. And it's kind of nice too, once you start getting a lot programmed, to just keep a backup, download them even at the end of the school year, and then save it. So if your Ansel system misfires or something happens, then you have a backup. And I see you've started using pictures. I don't even get that far into there.
I forget, is there a way to send recipes via Wi-Fi, or?
You can if I haven't been trained a lot on it. There is Wi-Fi capabilities, and you can get them so that they're connected to the internet, so that they're cloud-based. Then you can download the Connected Cook app, and you can control it from your phone. So there's a snowstorm, and you're 2 hours late, and you're like, I need to get this oven preheated on my way to work. You can pop on and tell it to preheat. And
Well, I just wondering, instead of using the USB, if you could
Oh.
do it and then send it to all the different sites.
yeah, there is. They have to. I don't remember how it connects to the Wi-Fi like that. So we can look into it.
Well, I didn't know if like you'd want to share with
So
all
the-
the schools.
So the first training that I did, that was virtual during COVID, we were sitting, I'm sitting at my desk in Fargo, and the trainer was at his house in Texas, and at their corporate office in Chicago, and their like entryways, she has like a display once, and they're hooked up. Well, all of a sudden he's messing around with it, all of a sudden his phone rings, he goes, watch this, and he answers, and it's the receptionist going, did you just turn these ovens on again? Because she freaks her out. She's sitting there, and all of a sudden the ovens turn on, and they start preheating. He's like, I can control them from anywhere. Or when I was at training, we put a roast in overnight, so then when we went out to dinner, he kept checking it, and saying, oh, it's at this temp, like would show us on his phone that he was controlling it from. But yes, so some universities will do that. Then they can write a recipe at their desk and send it to all the units throughout the campus. I know, because I see the Wi-Fi's turned, it's dark, so it's not connected, yeah. And I think in the setup, they have to turn something on for it to do that.
We tried it at Davies at one time, and it didn't connect, it didn't work, so. Okay.
Schools and their good cell service within the building.
Yeah.
Any other questions so far? And we kind of got off topic there. So then your stars, any of the cooking cycles that you turn to your favorites. Again, if you want to take something off your favorite, you just hit the garbage can and remove it. The 6 buttons in the middle, like the older version, you kind of had to go from what you're cooking, then pick your cooking cycle, and then customize from there. They now put same way, that like they call it the center of the plate, and then they actually go from cooking cycle. So if you were going to grill a steak, before you had to go steak, grill, now you can go grill, steak. You'll notice as I do it, just these are what I'm used to because they've always been there. So it's the basic, the poultries, red meats, fish, egg cookery, and then like the baked custard, that's supposed to be a picture of a flan. So it'll be like cheesecake is under there, I believe, and like flan or baked desserts, creme brulee. And then it's veggies and sides, and then that's your baking button. And then your cooking cycles, this is what they call their finishing plates, but there are some cool ones in there that I'll show you. Pan fry, poaching or boiling, steaming, like baking, and then grilling. So what I was going to say, I showed you in the finishing plates. There's a couple different ones. They have why it looks like a dinner plate on a rack. For this size and the bigger one, they have, like if it's a plated banquet for a wedding, you like pre-plate the food cold, and then they like reel the whole cart in there and rethermalize them to go, instead of plating them hot. You can have your veggies cooked, your potatoes cooked, your protein cooked, build the plates right before they go out to banquet, probably 10 minutes or so to heat on the plate, sauce them, put the covers on, and they go out. Worked banquets, and you'd have like 10 layers of gloves on because you're putting green beans on a plate as they slid down the conveyor. And So that's where you'll see those. But in this cycle, there's this one called serve container, and that's anything like your hot dish. If you do like a macaroni and cheese, anything that you're going to serve in your pan, big pans, you hit your container serve. You get to pick with or without a probe. If you pick with a probe, so if you had a pan of taco meat that you're just heating up, you pick with your probe. You tell it what temperature you want it to go to. Stick that probe in your product, and just walk away. It'll give you an estimated time over here, and then it'll tell you. You'll have your estimated time. Right here's our goal temp. Really big right here will be your actual temp. So if it's a pan of taco meat that we pulled just out of the cooler, it'll buzz when it's 165 degrees. So your hands are free to do other things opposed to.
What about from frozen?
So what I would do if I'm going to kind of cheat the system from frozen, because you aren't going to be able to get that probe in there. One, you could poke a hole with a paring knife to be able to get your probe in there. Or do it without a probe at first until it gets soft. Because then when you do it without a probe, you get to set a timer. So then set a timer and then let it get soft enough, and then I would switch it, just for my personal, I would switch it back to using the probe, because then I know I don't have to open the oven, lose temp to keep checking to make sure it's ready. And if you have the probe stuck in the very center, obviously the outside's going to get hot faster, so makes sense. That one works good. I was at NDSU and we did tater tot hot dish, and they were done, and then these buttons here at the bottom, or they call it like your finishing prompts, those will become live buttons once it hits temp. So the first one, it looks like a blob with 4 red spikes. It's a salamander, kind of turns it into a toaster. So like when we did tater tot hot dish, the tater tots weren't quite crispy. You hit that and it like browns the top of them. So or that if you're baking a pizza and it's done, or lasagna and the cheese just isn't toasted enough, you just hit that. That'd be the one time I tell you to stay close, because it's literally like taking a torch to it. It goes fast. It goes from not brown to really brown really quick.
How does that work if you have 10 pans in there? I mean, are the ones at the bottom going to get us toasty? Or?
It's pretty consistent. If you had like a 2-inch pan on every rack in here, your very center one probably isn't going to be as brown as the outside ones, just because of the airflow, but it's still going to get brown.
That's what we noticed with pizza. It's
When you have it completely full, because it's good, but it's still working against, if they're really. So I know one school did it, like if they want, especially the high school, they want them more brown. Elementary schools, if it's got a little color, their kids are going to say it's burnt. That one school did it, they just did them every other, just because they just figured out it's fast, and then they get done just a little bit quicker. Yep. And so then on your finishing buttons, then there's to hold. So if it's done and you're like, I have lunches in 45 minutes, you can just push this hold button. And what it's going to do is, because you set it to a temp, the oven's going to just turn on and off as it needs to keep that product 165 degrees. Whereas you put stuff in your holding cabinet, you set the ambient temperature, and it just goes.
Because it gets, when you take that pizza and put it in there, the pizza gets really dark.
So when I worked in hotels, we called those coffins, because it's where food goes to die. Like, go put this in the coffin, and everyone's like, I'm like, well, it's where food goes to die, because it never looks as good as it came out of the oven. And then there's an add time, and then there's a new batch button, and that's, the rationale compared to a regular oven will go, once it hits end cycle, it stops and waits for you to tilt the next thing. So that new batch button, like if you're baking a batch of cookies, because if you look, it'll preheat about 50 degrees hotter than it actually bakes. But then when you pull your pan of cookies out and you're reloading right away, just hit new batch, and it's only going to come back up to the cook temp. It's not going to preheat again.
So, but when so that pizza's done and you want to hold it, that oven's still at that higher temp.
But you push hold, and it'll stop, like it'll open the flue to cool it down, so it'll stop cooking. I mean, it'll still cook a little bit, but yeah, it's going to adjust itself into a hold mode.
Okay. So what about the fan speed then, as far as?
Once it goes into hold mode, the fan will turn down.
But the difference in fan speed is like, you got it too high, the pepperoni will
Blow off. Oh, I was with a Hutterite colony, and they wanted to make toast in there, so we had sheet pans full of bread. And we're standing there talking, and all of a sudden the one lady was like pointing, and the bread was like literally like levitating. And then all of a sudden it like slid right to the front. It went down the front of the glass, and it went back across the back, and it was trying to go back up the back, because the fans, compared to like a convection oven and even a higher end convection oven, they'll say have an auto reversing fan. They'll go 2 minutes this way, 2 minutes that way. Whereas this, if you do have parchment paper in there, you'll notice it blows very random, because it senses the hot spots and it tries to adjust for that. That's why they say everything gets pretty even, because it'll adjust. Like it notices it's getting cold over here. It tries to keep it very consistent in there. You'll really notice if one of those sensors ever goes out or gets like crumbs on it, that why is this corner of the oven, it normally isn't like that, but it doesn't happen very often. And these prompts will vary depending on what you're cooking. Like in the steam mode, I don't think after steaming there isn't a hold button. Like it's just, so it's different. So now say we use this container serve button, just how I did the settings, we really liked it for taco meat, and you want to save it, you just hit the little notebook with the green check mark. Oh, it's going to tell me, I hit the, so it's going to pop up with the name, and you just give it a name and save it, and then it'll go into your like Rolodex of your menus. Now what it did is, it's kind of new, like it wants me to shut the door so it actually can preheat. So that message pops up. You can move those messages off to the side, which that's pretty new too, because before it's like behind this little sentence, there will be a button. So that serve container is nice for reheating, or if you do a hot dish or a goulash or a baked.
Can you show her which one you were talking about?
This one. Yep. that's where that serve container is. This one, you can turn it into holding cabinets, and same thing, you get the parameters of with a probe or without. So if you do with the probe, stick the probe in stuff, and you're just saying keep this food at this temperature, don't let it go above. So you'll hear it kind of kick on, kick off to maintain that. Or you can do it without, and then you get to set the ambient temperature just like you do with your cabinets. You're saying, I don't care what temperature the product I put in here is, I want you to stay 165 degrees. So it's kind of nice to hold things that you don't want to get too hot.
I got a question. You said pizza's challenging.
Yes.
What are you putting the pizza on right now?
We'll just,
A sheet pan?
and then we do the ones that are kind of pre-cut, we do 1.5, and then the specialty pizzas we just do 1 because they're cut.
And they're all square pieces? Or
No, they're round.
The Big Daddies?
Yeah. So our thing is like.
I just saw it, you had a menu say that said
if
Big
we
Daddies.
do, like the 1.5, especially cheese and pepperoni. Half the pizza will be like perfect, and then the other half will look like it's not done yet, like the cheese. And the bottom and the middle is still like lumpy. And
More so when you do a lot of them at a time, or is it?
I usually do every other. Yeah.
Would
We tried.
Sarah, do you think pans with holes in them would help out?
That,
Trying.
you've tried.
You tried those too? Didn't Airflow goes up there?
So sometimes you have to cook it longer just to get a firmer pizza, but then it's getting too dark on the top.
Then the top's getting too dark.
I took some pictures of it.
So guys
Do you
use
remember?
the pizza bowl?
It was,
Do you use the pizza bowl?
I tried like 5 different things.
I mean, we try it from frozen or thawed, and
Yeah,
just
it's-
don't.
And that's where when you go to build your buttons and you can customize, like the good example I use with the school is, and I was at a school that their 2 lunch periods were back to back. So they had no prep time in between. So the kids that ate second lunch, their french fries or their tater tots especially, got cooked before the first lunch and sat in a cabinet. So she goes, those kids that eat second period, they have hash brown casserole because they're all just like mushed together. So what we did is, like that's where, I'm kind of getting ahead, but I think it'll make sense. So we were in the french fry mode. So every level of light and darkness that you pick raises the oven temp by about 5 or 6 degrees. So if that helps,
So this was a while ago, but I mean,
Oh.
usually it's even more
extreme.
extreme than that, yeah. So I don't know if that's how your guys' pizzas come out.
No.
And it's, yeah, it's better.
But
for sure.
since they commissioned to look at that,
It is better, but even so, it's a hit or miss.
You're so So I'll finish this train of thought and then we'll, okay. So like what we did is, so it raises the temp about 5 degrees for each one. So we got it a little hotter, so they were a little crispier, but not brown. They were just more crispy. And she goes, oh, those elementary kids aren't gonna like them. They're gonna say they're too crunchy. I said, but when we put them in there, that's gonna soften them up. So then we saved the button. I think it was about here that we did it for tater tots, and we just labeled that button tater tots holding. And then the tater tots to serve, we labeled them like tater tots first or something is what she called them. And then so we had 2 different buttons saved, and that's, you know, so you could do that with your pizza, like if you had pizzas that were from frozen, or, and then you kind of figure out how to time and temp to cook them from frozen, and you can save it that way. But then if you have ones that are par thawed, or if you pull pizza out the day before and they're completely thawed, that then the parameters you might go lighter for longer.
Yeah, I have saved in there one for frozen, one for.
Yep, I saw that. I'm
so
like,
if we use the pizza program that they have in there, you said that was more for.
so that's kind of a more of a raw dough. They moved it. Used to be so here in the veggie and sides, there's this par baked / convenience, for lack of a better term. Anything that's like bar apps, like things that you would have like an appetizer, like mozzarella sticks. That's the pre-breaded. This button works really well. It does. I use this a lot with elementary schools because it doesn't get as hot as the pizza button. To use this par baked convenience for some of your frozen pizzas because the temp it's not as hot, so that might help. So you might have to go less heat, but for a little, and then a longer time because then they won't get as much color, but yet the crust will get hot. And I think, did you say you had some pizzas that
Yeah,
do you want to try one?
Yeah, I think we've got one frozen, or like a half one out.
So should we try it on that par baked convenience and see?
Yeah.
What setting are you guys using? Where you're having issues with pizza?
They used to do the chef hat pizza practice. We just kind of
Played with it?
Now it's good. Sometimes if they're frozen, we go to 425 for another minute.
Just a little bit extra.
Yeah, we just do ours out there. We'll eat up all the time. But we only eat in the pepperoni, Big Daddy's pizza, so I don't know if your flavors have that after dinner. Just the hot.
It's always the hurry up and wait for it to preheat. It seems like it takes forever when we stand here and watch, but it really doesn't take that long.
So this is a cup.
That one's thawed or par thawed, and this one's frozen. Any other questions while we wait for it to preheat? Sure. Par baked convenience, and it's under veggies, which I know I wish they would put it under baking as well.
So with the roll, I've noticed like even today, what did I do? The corn dog. Oh, the corn dog. So I had the probe in for the corn dogs in the middle of the pan.
it got hotter.
And that's pretty impressive.
So, like how your normal thermometer reads from like one spot, like there's usually a dimple where it reads. This will read from 7 points. So you want to make sure that as much of the
It's
all the way in.
The core dog, yeah, it's all-
Oh, you put it in on the end.
If it's like in and it's by that stick.
Maybe. I guess I haven't ever attempted a corn dog. That par bake I used, it was with a school, and we use this par bake convenience to do their corn dogs because we did them right from frozen. Because when I got there, she goes, we pull them out the day before so that they're thawed when we do them in our convection oven. And I said, well, do you have any pulled out? And she goes, no. I said, well, pull out some frozen ones and we'll test them just baking from frozen. And she goes, then I don't have to try to refreeze and like what we don't use. And I want to say it took like 15 or 16 minutes that we did them on that par baked from frozen, and they were like 165, 170 degrees. And that's where you can adjust your, like, and now with these newer ones, I know the older ones you can't in cycle, you can adjust. So like if we have this pizza in and we're like, this is getting a little hot just to do these ones, you can go like this in cycle and it'll turn down. So you can adjust it, or if they're not getting browned enough, you can turn the temp up. But then you can't, if you go to save it at the end, it won't save that little change in there, but at least to, yeah, it won't save like if you've tweaked it, but it's kind of nice that you don't have to waste product trying to tweak and adjust it.
I know one of the things that we learned when we did our initial thing out in Davies, for some of you might not work there, he said it's really nice to program it and put it in your favorites. That way if your cook is gone, but it was gone, all they have to do is hit that button.
I always use the analogy, like once you have it programmed, I could show up and cook for you. Like if you had a recipe and it's like, okay, pizza, you push the pizza button. Okay, like.
Yeah, so like if your cashier has to pull your piece of pizza and all she has to do is look at your favorites, that button's there and it doesn't have to guess what you're doing.
They use that example for us at training that, you know, a hotel banquet. The popular thing now with weddings is at like 10 o'clock you do pizzas or you do snacks. He goes, chef doesn't want to stick around, but who's still there? The dishwasher. So he had it set that, and you can even set him that like at a certain time, only one button shows up. Like you can have it that, like his screen literally was the pizza button. So he's like told his dishwasher, at this time when the server comes to get you, you push this button. When it buzzes, you put them in, and when it buzzes, you get the server and they will take care of it. So there's a lot you can.
Yeah, they can do a lot.
I said it's kind of like Microsoft Excel. Like we all use like this much of this much that it's capable of.
Yeah, because I know some of the other schools too, they just manual cook and that's it. It's like, oh my gosh, these things are so, oh, that's so good.
So that there's a grocery store chain. There's none up here, but where I grew up, the Hy-Vee, and we were in Des Moines and we were at the deli eating, and a rationale went off, and I'm like, oh, I know that wasn't my daughter. Goes, that's a rationale. I'm like, you spend too much time with me at these trainings because she's Helena. Because she's gone with me to a couple, and then I had a demo control panel at home, so she messes around with it, or she plays with the app on my phone, and she's like, I recognize that sound. That's a rationale going off. Or you'll see them on TV now, like if you're watching like a cooking show or a TV show, and they ran through the kitchen in the school, and there's a rationale in the background.
Something that I found really different is the proofing. When I proof like my fresh dough buns or rolls, the two ovens are very different.
From the older ones to the new ones.
Yeah, the new ones.
So, like they told me the last time I was at training, they cook on average about 27 tons of food a year to program those buttons. So I know as cooks, you want to have control, and it's like that was kind of my thing to like learn to trust them, that they aren't just random numbers that they came up with. They really diligently work to program those and tweak them. That's why they do software updates, because they'll adjust and find. I've always just gotten in the habit of when I open it just to slow, so you don't give yourself a facial.
Yeah, because I don't have the exhaust one.
Should we do the from frozen? Should we just put them both at the same time since we're standing here watching and we can kind of keep an eye on them? Ooh. So now I just used their standard kind of in the middle, and it was set for 12 minutes. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on them. How long do you what time do you normally cook them?
Well, see, I've never done the perfect one, but it's like 7 or 8.
Okay.
I said 10.
So it preheated to 440, and now it's baking at 408. And that's on the middle button on the par baked. So I don't know what temp it. Around 400. Figured it just leaving it right in the middle, then we kind of know where we started from.
Why would the pans do that?
Because they're so cold, and it's that shock of getting hot so fast. Yeah, I'm sure, because that one was the frozen one, so it's really cold.
That's weird when you look in there and all your pans are cockeyed like that.
You would be too if you go from 0 degrees to 400 degrees. We do that when we go from 10 to 70 degrees. For hot dogs?
Ever since I started doing that, it's all hot dogs. Yeah, they were
Use the grilled mode. And I'll show you once we get cooking. The last time I went to training, the pictures of the stuff we took. I mean, and you put 20 chefs in a room and give us a whole freezer full of food and a refrigerator. We're going to be sitting there trying to figure out, like we were like almost like deep frying poached eggs and grilling steaks, and we were beer battering fish and trying to figure out how to emulate being in a fryer but do it in here. And making creme brulees. We roasted a whole pig. We did prime rib, macaroni and cheese, all in one pan. That it was raw noodles, cream, butter.
Are you using those hot dog machine?
That's what I did them for my my cousin's graduation. He wanted hot dogs and brats. So I bought them all here, and we only had the little XS one, so it only holds 4 half sheet pans, and I did them on my lunch hour. I did 300 brats and hot dogs in that little one, and we put them in the freezer, cooled them down, and then I froze them overnight, and then we packed them in a cooler, drove the 6 hours, and then we threw them in a roaster the next day for graduation. So we had brats and pan fried, and they only take 7-8 minutes, and they just get a little crispy instead of done. Yep. One trick a school told me that you got those free French fry pans, and nobody uses them because they want to be able to do full sheet pans. But those, if you did get those, the baskets.
Yeah, I have a bunch down there.
One of the schools told me what they like to use them for is their IQF California blend, the broccoli, cauliflower, carrot mix. Put them in there, and instead of steaming them, turn it on. Do the roasted veggies, because what's a roast do? It's a little more dry. Do the roasted veggies, and they set it at low, so it's pretty light, but it kind of dried them off. So then when they put them in their steam table pan, they weren't soupy. So it kind of dried. They kind of looked. The top ones kind of got a little dry, like they almost looked like baby carrots once they've sat out. But then once you mix it together, but it pulled some of the moisture off, the extra ice, that then they held better in their steam pan. So there's a good one to play with a little bit. So just do on your vegetables, do roasted instead of steamed, and it just kind of pulls some of that extra moisture out. Same thing if you ever have a partial bag of French fries, and then once they're partial, you get the ice crystals, and if you threw them in your regular convection oven, you would have a soupy mess. If you do those in here on the French fry mode, you'll just notice a lot more moisture getting evacuated because of when you use the French fry cycle, it has its ideal moisture setting, and so if there's too much moisture in there, it's going to pull the extra out.
So that when you do that, when we do hash browns or tater tots, then
You'll notice it open and evacuating moisture
I just don't know how to hold them
afterwards.
without
So
putting them in the oven.
see, now you're going to call them that too.
So we did really take it, we just put them in our oven.
Use that as a holding cabinet.
Yeah, but we just turned it on a certain
Temperature.
It doesn't stay crispy.
So on these ones, they're in their holding mode. You can set a moisture level if I remember right. But I know like you don't want to use this as a holding cabinet if you're trying to bake other stuff. Whoops. Because here in your hold, you can set how dry or moist you want it to stay. So you'd want it to set it drier if you're holding like French fries.
So we have rice and pasta.
Do you do, is it IQF frozen pasta or is it raw or
The raw pasta.
in the rice?
And do you see yours? I mean, that's
So there is a pasta button in here, which pasta, that won't take as long because it's not as much. So here in our, so keep an eye on the pizza because I'll get distracted and start talking about, I was like, okay, they look pretty good still. Okay, so in your veggies and sides, there's a steamed rice button. Once you hit it, you're going to set it like the boil time of doing regular pasta, but if you hit the question mark, it'll kind of give you some kind of the parameters of like your ratio, because is it brown rice? You know, it'll kind of tell you your ratio of water to rice to use. And then, yeah, you just put your probe in. I sometimes, if you have a small pan of rice, I'll put a cover on it to hold the probe down in it because it just pops out. Like if you're doing a full 4-inch pan, you have a cover, but I was like, I just set a sheet pan on there. So here's like on the steamed rice tips and tricks. Wash your rice in they call those pans like C and S pans. Pour enough water in the container to cover the rice. Ratio of water, rice to varies. Long grain, 1.8 parts of water to 1 part of rice. Shorter grain rice, it says 2.5 parts water to 1 part rice. Have you ever rinsed your rice? I don't. I always toast my rice before I cook it.
You don't rinse your rice?
No, I toast it when I make. Everyone does it different. Sometimes I do, like if it smells or it feels really dusty, then I'll rinse it. But so going by pasta, I think that's in. So in your veggie and sides, there's a button called pasta with sauce. So if you were gonna make like goulash, what you can do is the ratio is 1 pound of noodles to 1 quart of water and 1 quart of sauce, just on your dry pasta. So it's kind of a 1 to 1 to 1. And then when you push this pasta with sauce button, you're gonna tell it, the timer that you're setting is the boil time of the kind of noodles you're using, like a whole wheat, is it rotini that I saw? Rotini is gonna take longer than an angel hair. So, I swear when I just looked at them, they were fine. Then you're telling it the boil time of your noodles, and so then you stick your probe in, and it'll.
Do you want to grab the pot holders? No, on the basket.
So this is the par baked one, or par thawed, par baked. This is your frozen one. What do you think?
See, now some of the kids don't like that, because then if you throw them in there, you hold them for even 5 minutes, they just,
Keep going.
yeah. So what is the bottom line? Yeah, is it?
See, and those are, I realized that the specialty is that's the barbecue chicken. They cook better on the bottom. It's the cheese and pepperoni. I don't know if it's just the recipe is different or the dough.
It probably is different.
Yeah, for me, yeah. But it's,
And like your barbecue chicken, there's gonna be a lot of sugar in the barbecue sauce, so that's gonna have the tendency to brown. That you might end up realizing that we need to turn the color down
Yes.
even more for those ones.
but specifically like the cheese and pepperoni that are like green kind of top, but the middles are like still almost doughy.
Smells like pizza.
How long is that?
So I had it set for 8, or it was 12, but then I turned it down to 8, and there's still a minute left. So a minute 45, so or a minute 14 was left. So like 6:50, almost 7 minutes.
Would that make a difference for the time for how many you have in there?
A little bit.
as well?
There, it'll be a little. It's not huge, but I would say when things have such a short cook time, yeah, one. But if you had one roast in there opposed to 10 roasts, that one is not going to be. But things that have like a 10-minute or under cook time, yes, if you have that loaded up, 7 minutes probably would have been fine. Yeah, I did the par baked, and I just left it right on the center one.
But even so, having like the pizza and half on there, would that make
Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
So maybe we should have went on the light side.
Yep, I would. You could have gone lighter, and then you might have had to increase the time a little bit. I just like how it gets so even. You know, like you make them at home, and it's like this. It looks like this on the edge, and the middle is still like white cheese.
Just underneath them?
There's gloves on the other side of the
I was gonna
But
just
that
let it.
picture the picture you showed us, it was pretty white. It was kind of
What-
brown
what-
around here and white in the middle.
But we
right?
use the pizza setting, right, on those? But then you said those are more for like
A completely raw dough. But this is a fairly. Is it a par baked crust? I didn't touch it before it went in.
Shouldn't be.
That it's a completely cooked crust, or is it raw? The crust,
when it thaws out, it's mushy.
it's mushy,
Yeah.
so it's probably a raw dough.
Yeah,
Does anybody want to taste that? It's the barbecue one?
This is the Are they both barbecue?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, we just have to. There's some. Cindy, there's some little things there.
I just learned to like let it sit for a second, otherwise the cheese all just runs together.
Oh.
No, it's and it should be.
We don't have time to wait.
It should be.
Do you guys do big gutties as much?
Yeah. We just only do like the pepperoni.
Pepperoni?
I think it looks decent.
You think that's too done though for what the kids want? Or
Just because if
raw?
we have to hold it,
It's gonna get darker. So that's what I would just do. Set it. If we go one later, then it's only gonna preheat to 414, and it's gonna bake at 378. So that's just one step lighter.
Yeah.
So using the par baked, there are times, not specifically that one, but like when I have to put another batch in and it loses all that temp with it being open, should I adjust the time or temp for the next round or?
So what you can do is once you get it dialed in and you have a recipe saved, you can get it to, kind of jumping ahead, you can set it on this level cooking. So then see, because you have 10 racks, you have 10 slots, you can put your pizza here, and if you put you set a timer for your first so many pizzas, and then if you're adding more, when you open the door, it'll pause the timers that are running. So say we put in a pizza and it's a 10-minute cook time. And at 8 minutes in, I decided to add 2 more pizzas. When I open the door, it pauses that timer. And then when I shut the door, if you have it open for an extended period of time, you watch it, that 8-minute timer might jump up to 8:45 because it's helping you adjust for that. So some, like on pizza day, you might have an oven allocated for doing pizzas during service, then this would be an option to have this going because then you can just set, and then if I set a timer for level 1, when the timer goes off for level 1, the light blinks at that level and the rest dim, so it like highlights what pan your timer set. If you're gonna put 5 in at the same time, don't set timers 1 through 5, they all went in at the same time, just set 1. But then it kind of helps you judge which ones are done at what time. But then that's where you can stagger and it'll reallocate for,
Like even just when I'm done taking all of them out,
oh, when you take them all out.
put more in, yeah.
So if you're just doing a new batch, okay, so when you got done, like we took these out early, but when it gets done and it blinks the double zeros, along the bottom, there'll be a picture of a white circle and an arrow that points to the picture oven, the new batch. So that's what you do, because then it's just gonna come back up to the cook temp. So like if it was cooking at 414, and like say we took these out and it dropped to 402, it's only gonna come back up to 414.
So then so before,
You should wait to put the food in probably.
yeah, so shut the door and then.
Because it'll come back up, it recoups itself really quick. It'll take a little time, but I guarantee it'll probably be back up within a minute.
So I can put the new pieces in and then
Yes.
that's what, okay.
Because like if you're baking a batch of cookies and they're done and you just hit new batch, open the door, pull them out, put new ones in, shut the door, and it'll go. Because it's gonna come up to readjust back up to the cook temp, not preheat again. Dan wants to try some.
Do you want to save? Like one of those recipes that are big?
Yeah.
What you can
Okay.
see here, but slightly different.
You want to leave it like how I did it, or should I do one step lighter?
I would do it 1 step later.
Yeah.
1 step later, and those were at 7 minutes, and you're gonna do a whole oven. I'm gonna set it for 8 minutes, and I'm gonna save it.
How do you say that?
So, wait, I'll go back. So right here, there's the little picture of the notepad.
Oh, right.
So you just hit the notepad with the little check mark on it.
Was that no one? Next one. And the drawer's in the middle. Now move the table. That table is not normally there, Sydney.
Oh,
What's that like?
Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'll just label it Pizza Sarah, so you know it's the button that we played with, just because then it might not be perfect until you cook with it. Because then what you can do if you use it, you can either choose to go in the recipe and just rename, like you go and find that recipe and just rename it, like if it's right, or you can manipulate and change it and then just give it a new name, and then you can delete the one, but then you know it's the one that we did while I was here.
It's really good.
One thing I noticed when you use the combi mode, like things stay hot longer, like because of the steam. Because steam really penetrates, whereas hot air, like I said, hot air just kind of like blows on it. Whereas steam is like, I'm gonna get you hot. And I've noticed that stuff that comes out of the combi stays hot longer. Like even we've done it when we do chicken wings or French fries, that you go bite into one after it's been sitting here, and you're like, this is still really hot. All right, should we do pasta? So I was saying that pasta with sauce button, the ratio, if you're gonna do like goulash, it's kind of a 1 to 1 to 1. So what I always do if I'm gonna do straight just pasta, kind of the same, so it'd be like 1 pound of noodles to about 2 quarts of water, but I just make sure that the water, you kind of know from cooking that how much volume, if you put it into a 4-inch pan, you know how many noodles would take to fill it up. I always just put a little extra water than you think, because if the noodles start to poke out, those ones get crispy. But it's nice to have, if you have a little extra water and you're doing full-size pans, you got a drain in the bottom of your oven. Instead of trying to walk across with extra water, just pull it forward, tip it, and just dump down the drain. So,
Like when we come back next week, we're doing macaroni and cheese, but it's an Alfredo sauce with a rotini. So that would
does it come in as a bag pre-done? So you're just heating it up?
no. So the Alfredo sauce is a bag.
Is a bag?
Sauce, and then.
So how do you usually heat up your Alfredo sauce in the bag?
Well, it's supposed to be done together.
But then the noodles,
that white cheddar sauce.
they just stick to the bottom of the noodles when they're done.
Yeah.
So you cook like these noodles in the Alfredo sauce.
We always mac
You
them
put them in there raw, and then
Pour the Alfredo sauce over the top
with some water.
with some water.
Took way longer than it needed
Needed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like that Land O'Lakes ready to eat sauce. I don't know if you've ever used it.
I haven't used it. It's super thick, so you just have to add water to it to.
yeah, we did the recipe. When we did the recipe that she put on there, we do add water to it, but it's not.
Still
very-
not.
There's a hot water dispenser.
I was gonna say, will you get some hot water on here? But you're eating.
No, I'll fill it up.
Just like probably, so it's probably like a half inch above the noodles.
You want it hot?
Yeah, here, I can show you this.
Yeah.
That's the
I
hot
sure hope
water.
it does.
Does this work? It's so funny.
So here.
I'm gonna do it because it takes.
It's 190 degrees.
How's the pizza? Good.
I do like it how it got like more crispy on the bottom.
Yeah. That's what we're on.
Crispy.
Firmer on bottom.
Maybe too much.
That's okay. I'd rather have extra water than not enough water. So just anywhere, and we'll get them.
Yeah. Can't forget about him. He's the most important guy. I'm okay.
Okay, I just set the cover on to keep them in, but I kept it kind of off so we can just kind of can see it, since it's such. I'm not used to cooking that small of amount.
So you put it on the pasta in sauce.
Yep. Oh, it doesn't.
Do you have a probe?
Told me to check the probe.
You guys
It's popped out.
cook because it's broken off.
No.
Because like now the probe being in there, the probe is going to judge is that the water is up to a boiling temp to cook the noodles. So it's more than just a thermometer. That's why they're very adamant about using the word probe, not thermometer, because it's more than just.
But the reason, because the video you watched wasn't that it was telling us to steam the noodles.
So if I'm just doing the noodles,
To do steam,
I'll just do them.
and that works too. I just use the pasta sauce because then people remember that pasta.
our next meeting we have chicken drumstick. Okay, so those will be frozen when we cook them.
And they pre-cooked? Are they breaded or breaded or?
Pre-cooked chicken drumstick.
Okay, and it's just like a regular seasoning. I asked because one time somebody's like, "Oh yeah, it's just a drumstick," and then it was like a teriyaki marinated. So I kind of told them what I thought. Well, then she called and she's like, "They burn." I'm like, "Well," and I'm like, "How?" And she goes, "It has a sweet glaze." So with the sweet glaze, you're gonna want to make sure and turn your temp lower because of the sugar, because the sugar is gonna caramelize fast.
These are just breaded.
They're breaded.
We have the receipt too, but we're not doing those.
How we have them breaded.
Yep, and you're cooking them from frozen, so I would do it without a probe because then you can set your timer. And I would set it fairly light just because they are pre-cooked and you're not going to want them overcooked. Because the nice thing about setting it lighter than you think, there's ways to manipulate it to get brown up that batch, opposed to if you set it too dark, then you can't take the brownness off. So I would say you could do breaded. With chicken breaded, and setting it at light. See, it's going to bake at like 450. I was just going to see, go all the way back. It does seem kind of hot. So let's see if we do on the pan fry without the probe, and we set that one to light. That's going to do it at 400. So that's doing on the pan fry is a little. I saw the moisture in my corner of my eye, and I was still thinking pizza. I'm like, oh my god. I did have a customer. I tried to troubleshoot with them over the phone, and they were making M&M cookie bars. And she goes, "My first batch turns out perfect, but my second batch looks horrible." And I said, "Why does it look horrible?" She goes, "Well, the color's washed off the M&Ms." It's like, how is this washing the color off the M&Ms? So I'm like, walk me through what you do. They weren't doing the new batch with the second pan. They were just starting it over, but they were switching it out. So it was preheating. It was preheating, and then, yep. And so it took some, and then I was like, oh, it's washing your M&Ms off. Any other questions?
Ladies, what are the questions?
Show me how to save something again. You kind of.
Oh, okay, so like now, I'm just gonna move that out of the way. So like, say we just did chicken and it's perfect, we like it. See the little picture of a piece of paper with a check mark? Just touch that. It comes up with the name of whatever cycle you used. You just, yep, and you can change a picture. There's some pictures built in there, so you can give it a picture if you want. So then you just give it a name. And then once you've named it, when you go to want to cook that again, like we just saved the one that I called Pizza Sarah, then you go into your picture of your notebook, and that's where all your recipes are going to be written down. And here's my Pizza Sarah. You can find them easier. So then now it's ready. So now if we got,
But you can go back to then put it on your favorite.
yep. So then if you wanted to add my recipe to your favorites, you just hit the three dots and push the star. So now I'm going to go to the home screen. My pizza will be right. It will be in here. Sometimes it takes. There it is. So there's my Pizza Sarah. So we want to take it off the home screen, or off the favorites. There's off. Yep, you have to. So like if like my pizza recipe, if we added a minute to it and then click save, yeah, it'll tell you to give it another name because it wants you to a unique name. And that's where you could use, like you could take mine then and tweak it for thawed or frozen. But these really, between the thawed one and the frozen one, there wasn't a ton of difference. But kind of nice to save some time then, you don't, I know some of the schools, they prep the day before, but tomorrow there's an ice storm, and then what do? You have all these pizzas thawed, whereas maybe pull some to get yourself going, but have some that's just trade up, ready to go in the freezer. And then your quality changes. Kind of a funny story. Went to a healthcare in Devil's Lake, and then like 2 years later they got a new one. I said, how's it been going? And I'll show you what's changed. And they said about 6 months after you were here, the dietitian was really scolding us because they had residents that were gaining weight. They were actually just eating their food because it looked better. She goes, we started to watch, because she's like, we didn't do anything different other than how we've been cooking stuff. She goes, but we started to watch the garbage can, and the residents weren't throwing their food away because it looked good. And tasted good.
And I know some of the schools didn't know this before, but that filter,
The air filter.
that needs to be cleaned. I noticed we did ours a couple weeks ago. We got it.
So it really happens if it's a new construction school, because there's just dust in the air. You guys, school's not as much because you don't have a fryer in the vicinity that, but yeah, to just pop your air filter out, bang them out really good. You take them outside, just bang them out, it's good. Yes, it's down low, the big rolling ones.
Yeah, but it's underneath. It's on the same as that.
Yeah, if this like this one's like right here.
A bunch of their new stuff.
No, they don't do those.
Yeah, no, you're talking about the no, little ones, like the ones that are in the older ones. That's what they have one, it's just they haven't found
One little option too, if you ever need it.
Yeah, they do get dusty.
Yeah, I noticed that. I think it's just like, I'll wipe them down, but we've taken them out and like put them in hot soap water.
And then you just want to make sure they're dry before you put them back in. I know I had one school that's paranoid, so they just bought a second set. So when they pull one off, they put the new one on, and then they wash it, and then just so like once a month they just rotate them.
I think we just had it sit out like over the weekend.
It's the same, it's
Like
ICombi.
a full split, but
But it's a tall,
The big rolling one. So it's 20. It holds 20 sheet pans.
So they're saying they don't want it filtered.
since we're talking rational,
It should be down on the bottom. It should be on the bottom. It might be on the side.
yeah, if you ever
I got this.
racks,
Don't use the double ones very often. I was gonna see if I can pull a picture of it.
those camera ones are
Yeah, they're nice to just pull out, and I just did mine in hot soapy water, let it dry overnight.
Dry it. Make sure. And that's the biggest thing that they stress to us is just make sure it's dry before you put it back in, so you don't pull moisture up into your computer. So. Well, I'm glad that you guys are doing your hot dogs and like roasting them.
Oh yeah, they love them. We started the time when we started like boiling them, and they just love those. But then when I started like the next month, we did actually grilling them, and they like it. We still do the burgers in
In
the pans.
the pans.
Yeah, just because we do like
Quantities.
Yeah.
on your agenda.
It's just lower temp.
Yeah, that's good to know. That was our biggest struggle.
See, usually what you need is in there. You just sometimes have to find it.
That's just it, you never have time to sit and that,
I know.
to figure out all these buttons, because you're just so rushed. But it was just the basic, usage. Did you get any training before you at Davis, or Discovery? No, you were just kind of.
Did you guys get? Do you have the pros at Discovery? You have the next one lower because I did a training at Discovery quite a while ago.
Yeah, but
Because I've been doing them since this is the version I learned on.
that is so old school.
The best when you go to set the timer, if you have set like a 2-hour timer and you're sitting there at the wheel just like spinning and spinning and spinning.
Well, then these, and then if you go too fast, it like skips half hour. It's like no.
Well, and on these ones, yep, you can use the touch screen, so it's kind of nice. Like they call it big jumps, little jumps, and fast jumps. So you can do the big jump. Yeah, you can cruise through, or you can even just with your finger on the dot.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, I was you guys heard me.
Just do the.
Because we've got 4 little ones. Yes, 5 racks in each one.
Yep. So it just varies. Like I said, just tells you what.
Only one.
And some days you use.
some days they use all 4.
How many students do you guys serve? Average. Yeah.
So when I put my rental into
Proof.
how can you get it to go right into Fargo without mixing up?
I know I get asked this. I should. Because I don't bake in them all that much.
Do you guys have the other?
The other one ready to go.
That's what I do.
But there's gotta be a way.
I'm gonna get your email and I'm gonna ask because I get asked that and I'm like, I know I've been told and I don't remember it. I don't want to tell you wrong because I don't want you to ruin a whole batch. Because then I'll get a
Oh, so then instead of having to wait for
proof. Yeah, proof and then it just goes right in, or you might have to push a button saying, "Yep, now start baking."
Do you have problems when you take them out sometimes you're in the sink or in the bath?
If I work into
No, but even after you bake,
I don't want you to actually do it. Because it wants to start proofing. Let it do it. There it goes. What's your email, Jan?
TROTRONNEJ. And then it's at fargo.k12.nd.us.
So TERRO.
TRO.
I was like TR.
TRONNEJ.
Okay. That makes sense. I was like, this isn't me. Well, then with the buzzing behind me, I'm like, okay. And you guys off on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay. So are we. We get that as a holiday now too. So I'll find out on Tuesday and send you an email.
I just feel like it doesn't take as long on the steep one.
I know her email. She mentioned fan speed. Depending on what cook cycle you're using, that might be an option to adjust your fan speed.
Yeah, I'm able to turn the fans.
Yep. And some it's just high low. Some of the baking ones, there's like 6 different fan speeds you can select. So it's just kind of whatever cycle you're in, you get that as an option sometimes. Cookies you can adjust it. I sat and played with a cookie recipe. So we used the frozen pucks at the store, and I had it so that the kind of pucks we were getting, we had them that they were cooked. They looked like a Chips Ahoy or a soft batch, but you broke them and they were cooked all the way through, but they were soft like a sugar cookie, but they were chocolate chip. Like we had no color on, they weren't doughy, but it was really low and a longer time. I want to say it was like they were cooking at like 300. But it was just kind of fun to sit and play with it to get chewy cookies.
So like ours they're just so flat. Like I don't know, do you guys do cookies too?
Only 2 days ago, chocolate.
Yeah. They're just like too flat. There's no rise.
I just taste the cookies, it's been setting in 9 minutes.
They said they
This last batch we had.
Well, I think typically we do
I think do you guys have the 1.85 ounce or do you have the little 1 ounce?
we got the bigger ones.
Yep. And then it comes at the default of where the chef hat is like the industry standards, but like it'll start to memorize your habits. So obviously you guys have been setting it lighter and longer because it puts a star, but it still leaves the chef hat of kind of what the default is. 9 minutes. And it gets to be personal preference too. I did 408 colonies in 4 days. I went to Canada, and like the first one was like, oh, those aren't like we did something like that's not brown enough, and the second colony said the same thing. So then I'm like, okay, the third one I'm going to set it 1 step darker, and you would have thought that I torched it. This is too done. And it's personal preference, like
And that's the difference too. It's like, okay, well I know half needs a little bit dark, but then
or like this. An elementary school kids won't like this at all. Like
and there's some like, oh, this is perfect today. They have, sometimes it's nice when the cheese is, not super dark, and then others, but it's mostly the bottom is that.
as long as your crust is cooked.
Yeah, the middle of the crust on the cheese. The cheese was cindy. Yeah, it's like it just flops. It's not.
And my daughter she likes the crispy. Like she'll literally cut around and she would take the crust of like when we have frozen pizza, we have to cut it in squares and she'll eat the outer perimeter because she likes the crispy part. She'll purposely she puts cheese on a sheet pan and bakes it to have crispy cheese.
How much time is left on that?
Yep. And I was to say the light went dark. I was like, but looks there's a couple that are poking out.
Turn the knob.
Wake it up.
You have to probe it what is the time?
So it's gonna go up to a boil temp. It doesn't give you the actual read because when you're doing pasta, it's just verifying that it's boiling. I was gonna just let it go till it's done because when we open the door, it'll tell us how long it took. So then that's what it does. It gives you an estimated time, but then if you let it go to the end, then you'll just start to learn. Yeah, you'll start to learn like, oh, pan of pasta takes.
1 minute.
And if you guys,
Rice the same way then?
they're in the veggie inside. There's a steamed rice button too. I thought about it. I'm like, we could have stuck them both in at the same time, but
It's okay. We don't need to do the rice now. The rice is, we can just use it steamed rice.
steamed rice.
So we know how to get a hold of you if after today you have
Yep.
questions or.
Yep. And I got Jan's email because I'm gonna find a good answer for one of her questions.
Okay.
My question was,
Go.
our rolls and stuff, how can we just write it down and go right into a cookie?
I don't want to set this if somebody accidentally touches it. So we had a couple noodles that peeked out.
Yes, you need to go.
So almost 21 minutes.
Oh, that was
So it's
really good.
20:55.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank